Good morning. Welcome to the online Bible study here at Peoples. We hope you are having a great day. We are in lesson 10 in our study. There is a fly in my tea. And we have learned through these lessons that we have a lot of flies that just land in the middle of our tea and mess up the track that we're on. I don't know about you, but I feel often that I am headed in a great direction and then something happens. And then I'm like, okay, we got to get this together and get back on track. But the devil likes to throw those things in our way often. And I'm thankful for the things that we've been able to talk through in these lessons. Those of you who are watching online, the next book that we're going to do is called It's Time by Crystal Radcliffe. You can get it on Amazon if you just look that up. And I'm excited about that study too. That will be next. We have this chapter 10, which we will cover this week and next week. And then we might do the concluding lesson before we start the next book. I hope you've learned a lot through this book. I hope the Lord has spoken to you. He's spoken to me in a lot of ways that I don't want to forget. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, how, we're willing to say, yeah, Lord, I'll do whatever. And then the fly lands. And here we go. So this lesson is about preparation and prayer. And 1 Peter 5:8 says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. The devil is after you nonstop. I've had multiple conversations this week with people talking about how the devil knows if he can get you or your family off track even a little, you're not effective for the Lord. If your family gets stirred up about something, mad about something, or there's a trial or a difficulty, it's all about how you respond to those things as to whether the devil can put the skids on and say, they're not doing anything for the Lord, because he gets you all wrapped up in it. Or we can make the choice, no, I'm going to use this situation for God's honor and for God's glory. Or I'm not going to react back to that situation that really just made me upset. I'm not going to do that. And it really is about what we choose to do with the situation. This lesson talks a lot about Peter denying Christ. Let's be honest, Peter probably never would have imagined that he would do what he did. And we like to throw or point fingers at the disciples a lot. Like, I cannot believe they would do that. I would do the same thing probably. Probably worse than what they did. We're in the middle of church. Some of us have been doing this a really long time, and we all fall into the trap of thinking, we won't do that. We're not going to act that way. I'm not going to behave in that manner, or I'm right about this. Like, we fall into the trap of thinking we're almost like we're above ever being tempted to do those things, but we do it often. Think of how many times you come to church and you're not engaged, or you haven't put in the effort to, okay, what am I going to get out of this? Lord, please speak to my heart. You're on the edge of your seat trying to take in, and you come in and you're just like, I'm here. But you're not really getting anything. Your mind is racing. I cannot tell you how many times I have to tell myself, stop thinking about all that stuff. Stop thinking about all the things you need to do, or what's coming next, or what you need to order off of that, or what's on the shop. Like, stop thinking about all that. We really have to put in the effort, and I think it is an all week long thing, but especially on Saturdays. I don't know about you, but on a Saturday where it's extremely busy, I don't get my mind focused in like I need to for Sunday. It is an effort to prepare yourself to go in and listen, but it's the same way for your devotions. How many times do we just flippantly do those just to say that we did them, rather than really putting in the time and the effort to sincerely read the Bible and to pray like we're supposed to? Or in the middle of that, letting your mind go racing about all the things that you're supposed to be doing. It happens a lot, and we like to say, well, I wouldn't have done that. I cannot believe Peter did that. He was walking with the Lord. Well, I get to walk with the Lord every day too. I have God's word. I have a great group of Christian friends. I get to come to a church, and often I think about how many countries in this world cannot even enjoy that. How many people are being killed for believing and doing what we do, and we just flippantly do it. It's not precious to us like it would be to somebody in another country. When Danny was traveling, and he was in one particular area, I'm like, oh goodness, because if you tell people about Jesus publicly, like that's not allowed in that country. It was communist where he was. And I'm like, ah. And I'm thinking, I don't even have to worry about that. So Peter's walking with the Lord every single day, and we quickly want to act like I wouldn't do that. And then we say, and even Jesus warned Peter that he was going to do it, and he still did it anyway. The Lord warns us all the time about stuff we're going to do, and we still do it anyway. But we like to act like, well, Peter knew better because the Lord warned him. Well, we get warned all the time. I mean, it's like my husband gets up and preaches on Sundays and says something, and the very next week, I'm like, well, this happened. I should have known it was coming. And, you know, he's been talking a lot about, especially this last Sunday, about going through trials. And you all know there's certain seasons of your life where there's really heavy ones. And then there's seasons where you feel like you're just coasting along and you're like, okay, when's it going to happen again? And I was thinking, I told the Lord on Sunday, Lord, we're not going through any huge things right now overall. There's little things here and there. But I want my heart to be prepared that if that does hit any time, that I react in the right way, that I choose the right spirit in all of it. So Peter's here with the Lord. I don't know why I think I would have done any better than Peter. I don't know why. And in Peter's life and in our lives, it all starts with prayer and preparation. And we're going to talk about where he failed in that area, where we fell in that area. The text is Matthew 26, 30 through 75. I'm not going to read all that. We'll point out a verse or two here and then some other passages that go along with it. And, you know, you have the gospel accounts in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So we'll read some verses from different ones. It first talks about how that Peter was going to deny Christ. And let's see. It's in Matthew 26, verse 34. Jesus said unto him, verily I say unto thee that this night before the cock crow thou shalt deny me thrice. Peter said unto him, though I should die with thee, yet will I not deny thee. Likewise also said all the disciples. So he's saying, I would die with you. I'm not going to deny you. I mean, just passionately saying, no way, no how am I doing that to you. How many times in my life do I tell the Lord, oh no, I'm all in, and then something happens? It's really easy for me to sit in a church service and you're in that atmosphere, your heart is tender, you're listening to the Lord, and you tell the Lord something, and then you get in the nitty-gritty of the week, and you're not surrounded by that atmosphere, and the next thing you know, you've gone back on what you told the Lord you would do. And so then it goes into Mark chapter 14, verse 31. Peter vehemently says, like they use that word, if I should die with thee, I will not deny thee in any wise. I'm not going to do that. He's just on and on. I'm not going to do it. I will not. You remember when your kids were little and you get on to them for something and you're like, I promise I will never do it again. Never, ever. And 5 minutes later, you're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that again? Well, we behave the same way. We just are grown-up children who continue the same patterns that we have. We have to break the patterns that keep us repeating those same things. Peter did not have any intention of denying the Lord. I have no intentions of denying the Lord in my life. Like we have sat down and had a conversation and we're talking about denying the Lord, every person in this room, probably every person listening would say, absolutely not. I would not deny the Lord. Not happening. And we like to make those promises, but we have to do what it takes to keep that promise. The Lord convicts me in areas of my life, and she talks about this, where I want to change. I tell the Lord yes, and then the next thing you know, I've turned it completely around. And then I'm like, but this is too hard. I can't do this. I can't handle this. And then we like to go to the Lord and we don't just not do it. Then we like to, because we know we need to talk to the Lord, tell the Lord, Lord, I know I told you that I would do this particular thing. But when I got in the middle of it, it was a little bit harder than what I thought it was going to be. And I just don't think I can do it. I mean, that's how we act toward the Lord. Things get more difficult. And it's not that we're not being truthful or committed to the Lord when we act this way. Everyone deep down in their heart, if you're saved and you are striving to follow the Lord in your life, you never intentionally are trying to make those decisions, to go back on what you tell the Lord. That's not an intention. I mean, honestly, I feel like you have to be rebellious to be like, absolutely not, I'm not doing that. We told one of our children, talking about surrendering to the Lord. And she was like, I don't even know like what I'm supposed to do. I said, the point is that you're willing to do it. And even if you don't know what that is now, you stay willing. A rebellious spirit is telling the Lord, no, I won't do that. In the midst of whether it's missions or ministry or whatever that thing is. Even if you don't know what the Lord wants of you, it's the willing spirit to tell the Lord, I will do whatever you want, not the rebellious spirit of, well, I'll do this, but I won't do that. Don't ask me to do that. That's where the fine line is and all that. And so none of us would intentionally say, I'm not going to stay committed to the Lord. We admit our sin, we agree to make changes, but most of the time we go back on some of those things. Teenagers will go to the altar 1,000,000 times to surrender their life to the Lord. And then 2 days later, it's back to, it takes a pattern of work and preparing and praying to keep those commitments. So in Luke 22, this is another account of all of this. This is one of my favorite accounts of it. Luke 22, verse 31, Jesus says, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. The devil wants you. He is not omniscient, omnipresent, any of those things like the Lord is. He does not know what's going on in here. He does not know really what's going on in your heart. He's not the Lord. But he does know those things based on how we act and react and the choices we make. So based on those things is how he knows how to get to us. So the Bible tells us, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. So let's talk about what sifting actually is. It's a two-step process. The first is the threshing, where they loosen the chaff from the edible grain. They spread the wheat on the hard floor or the stone floor, and they beat it. You ever felt like you're being beat half to death by the devil? Because that's what that is. He's going after you hard, and he makes it as difficult as possible, and it's like you're being beaten by the devil. And then the next step is called winnowing. The winnowing is when the loosened chaff, after they've beat it, I've seen pictures of people where they take a blanket, they put it on there, and they fluff it up in the air, and then the loose part goes flying away, and then they have the grain to keep that is the good grain. That's what's happening to us. When the devil comes after you about things, it's like you're being beaten and then thrown around, and then what is left is supposed to be the good part. And that's what we want from that. The farmers would let all the heavier grain drop to the ground, and then they would have the grain that they needed to be able to do what they needed to do. So that's why the Lord uses this as the example, because it really is like that in our life. He wants to beat up on us because he knows that if he can beat up on us enough, he can make us ineffective for the Lord. I'm not going to do much when I'm not going to do much when the devil comes after me and I just give in and lay down and say, fine, beat me to death. Because sometimes you feel like doing that. You just want to say, fine, I'm just going to lay here till you're done. And think it's just going to go away that way. But all of you know that when we react that way, we come out on the other end kind of miserable and grumpy, and you take everybody's head off in the process because you didn't handle it the correct way. You may feel like laying down, but there ought to be something inside of you that says, with the Lord's help, I'm going to get back up, and I'm going to use this beating as a way for the Lord to be able to be glorified in my life. I've told y'all this a million times before. My daddy was so sick for 10 years of my life, from the time I was in 8th grade until after the first year I got married. So sick. But he often would tell us, what does the Lord want to teach us through this? I'd never seen anybody my whole life, and I'd been in church my whole life. So it was very personal to me to watch somebody in my own family go through it and be so committed to glorifying the Lord, telling people about Jesus, going through it, and then, okay, what can we as a family learn from this? What is the Lord trying to teach us? Rather than just, this is terrible, this is horrible, and we want everybody to feel sorry for us. There were people who had great concern, but my daddy was not concerned about that. And it taught me a great life lesson that now I try to tell my kids, what is the Lord teaching you through this? This is difficult. Kind of like the situation we were talking about earlier. Yeah, that's kind of a petty situation, but when people act that way to you, how can you respond? Where do you put your focus? All those things. It's all about our response in all of it. So Peter is thinking he's not going to do any of this, and hours later he comes around and he's done exactly what he said he would never do. The devil's hoping in all of this that Peter just falls apart, and that Peter's faith would kind of just be done. And y'all have all seen people that went through difficult things that were very committed Christians in the beginning. Something happened, a trial came in their life, somebody hurt them, and they're no longer even in church anymore because they did not get the focus where it needed to be. They let the devil beat the mess out of them, and they didn't say, okay, Lord. They weren't praying and preparing like they needed to along the way, and you better be praying and preparing before it ever happens. But if you're not praying and preparing before it happens, in the middle of it, you better get a hold of it really fast. I don't want to ever come out on the other side of something like that and just give up on the Lord. But it happens over and over again. You could probably think of people right now, like people were probably going through your mind that you're like, they used to be here. And because of something happening, they're no longer even, like they don't even talk about the Lord. So that's what the devil was hoping for Peter, that he would be done with all of it and that nothing would be left to use for the Lord. We're ineffective when we allow so many things to affect us, when the devil puts those things in our lives. We allow little things that really don't matter. We allow things that people do to us to affect us. If I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. I'm not going back to church. There's a bunch of hypocrites there. We're all that way. I mean, let's just be honest. The person telling me this that way. It's just it's the fleshly human nature to have tendencies like that. And it's not God's fault that people act that way. When we've gone through difficult things in our lives, we have told our children over and over again, God is still good. God is still right. God is still sovereign. Even if people do those particular things. It doesn't change who God is. And honestly, it's not God's fault that people act that way. It's not. It's not God's fault that people are hypocrites. It's not God's fault that church people can be mean. It's not God's fault. But we get hung up on those things. We also get hung up on not being willing to change ourselves. We have to be willing to change. I don't care how old I get. I want to be willing to change. I want the Lord to be able to say to me, you're not right about that. Being so hard-nosed about that, you need to take a step back and look at this whole situation and realize what you're doing is doing more damage to the situation than just asking the Lord to take over and having a tender heart to be willing to change your perspective a little bit. But we all know, we as women want things our way. It has to be like this, and I'm not giving in. We all get that way. But think of how many times we've been that way before in our lives, and it was over things that really didn't matter. But we did a lot of damage in the process because we were, nope, it's going to be my way. I said it, and this is the way it's going to be. We're that way with our families. We're that way with friends. We're that way in church things, all of that. And so much of it doesn't matter. And the devil knows if he can keep us like that, we're not effective for the Lord. So what has happened in your life? What are you going through even right now? Is it sickness? Is it hardships? Is it loneliness? Is it losing friendships? Is it a trial in your family? What is it that you're going through that really could cause you or the devil to put the brakes a little bit on for you. I want you to think about those things. What is it right now that really could get you all, why is this happening? Why is this going on? Why did they do that? Why did the Lord allow that? That's a question we ask. Why did the Lord allow that to happen? Why? I think about Savannah Gardner passing away, and you think to yourself, why would the Lord allow somebody like that to be taken out of this world when she was doing such a great work for him? You think that. Well, we can get hung up on that, and you could get, if people don't have the right perspective, you can get all turned sideways about that thing and get upset with the Lord that he allowed that kind of thing to happen. Or you can say, think of the hundreds that watched the testimony, probably thousands, that watched the testimony of her life, and that it has woken some people up, or people got saved as a result of that maybe would not have otherwise, that wouldn't have happened. I don't want to get stuck in things that don't matter and cause me to be halted spiritually. I want to grow spiritually. I want to be more effective for Christ. God sees, thinking about the wheat, God sees things in my life that need to go away. Every single day he sees something and he's like, that needs to be beaten out, and then we need to get it out of here. Let it fly away and get out of here. But we don't like that. Nobody likes that feeling of, oh, I really have to get rid of this in my life. And I feel like for myself, it's not I'm walking into straight up sinful things. A lot of Christian people deal with things that are weights. Not necessarily sinful behavior, but things that are weights that keep them from doing more for the Lord. I say this often, social media, cell phones, all of that wastes so much time. Y'all think about back when we didn't have all that. What did we do? We sat around and had conversations with people. Kids went outside and played, got dirty. And now everybody just stares. We were laughing last night because there was a whole news segment on how they're bringing cursive writing back into public schools because it calms the brain and the mind. And I was like, did you just see that? I was like, we have cursive writing in our school. And my husband was like, yeah, they're talking about bringing it back in public schools because the effect it has on the brain and teaching kids to calm down. And I was like, we need to get back to a lot of things like that. The whole media, electronics, all those sorts of things have wasted so much of our time. It also has caused so much drama in our lives. So much drama. Families fight cryptically on social media about what they don't like about each other because they don't name names. And everybody's like, we know who you're talking about. Like, you don't have to tell me their names, but we all know who you're talking about. It's just caused so much wasting of time that we really don't have to have. There's so much in my life that I would say, I don't have lots of sinful things, but there's so much the Lord I could see would want to say, get rid of that, take away that, let's spend more time in this area, let's focus more on this, but we have to be more intentional about it. We can't just fly through life casually, hoping it's all going to work out, and I go to church, and my family's doing pretty good. No, we have to intentionally work on our relationship with the Lord. Intentionally, every day. And it is work. I don't care what anybody says. It's like anything in life. If you want to be successful in those things, you have to put in the work for it. But Jesus didn't leave Peter by himself. And that part I'm very thankful for. If it were me, and I can't say that I would ever be in the place of Jesus, but if I'd been Jesus, I'd been like, you told me you wouldn't do that, and you turned around and did it. I'm done. We treat people that way. We don't want people doing that to us, but we treat people that way that are on the other side of it. Jesus didn't do that to him. He doesn't do that to me. I can mess up every day of my life, and the Lord's still going to be there waiting on me. For me to look at him and say, Lord, I'm so sorry. I promised I wouldn't do that, but I did it again. And he looks at me and says, it's okay. And one of my favorite verses is in Luke chapter 22, verse 32. And he says, but I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. He's praying for me. Even when I don't pray like I'm supposed to, the Lord's praying for me. What an amazing thought. The Lord is praying for that baby. The Lord is praying for all the sick we have in our church. He's praying for me, even when I'm not going through something difficult, but he's praying for me to make sure I stay on track. And then when I'm not, he's praying for me to be right there beside me to help me get back on track. And I'm thankful for that. And the Bible didn't say when thou art converted, or it did say when thou art converted. It didn't say if. So the Lord is saying, I'm praying for you because I know this is going to happen. I know that, yeah, you're kind of off track right now, but I know you're going to get back on track. And when you are converted, you're going to go strengthen somebody else. So think about the worst things you've been through in life. How many times that it was tough, and there were days where it was really dark, but you kept your eyes on the Lord, and you come out in the end, and then he's allowed you now to take and strengthen somebody else because of the thing you went through. I am so thankful that he allows us to do that. That it's not just wasted. That we don't feel like, man, I went through this thing and look at that do. We're able to take what the Lord sends us through and go and strengthen someone else that's going through the same thing. We're not alone. We can trust the Lord. If we are sifted, we could come out on the other side with greater faith and ability to strengthen our brethren. Here's where we fail in all of it, and I don't know how much I'll get through this, but where we fail in it is our lack of preparation and prayer. After Peter denied Christ, it tells us in Luke 22:61 and 62, and Peter went out and wept bitterly. He knew what he had done. He knew exactly what he had done. He wouldn't have wept bitterly if he wasn't aware of, man, I really messed up and I know I shouldn't have done it. And I'm thankful that the Lord convicts us that way, that we're able to feel that in our hearts when we mess up. I tell people often, if you're not feeling that, then there's a problem. If you're not convicted somewhere along the way about your behavior about that thing or your choices about, there's a problem. There needs to be something that causes you to weep bitterly over the things that we do wrong. How did Peter get here? Because hours before, I'm not doing that. No, I would die with you. I'm not going to deny you. That's what he told the Lord. And hours later, he did it. Just like we do. How many times has it happened where you're reading your Bible or you're in church on Sunday, the Lord speaks to you about something and you're like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm going to make this right. And hours later something happens and you're like, oh. And you mess it up again. We're the same exact way. I mean, because we're thinking to ourselves, hours really, Peter? Hours? You could have done a little better than that. That's what we think. Luke 22:40 says, he said unto them, pray that ye enter not into temptation. When he sent them, he took, not all the disciples, but Peter, James, and John with him to Gethsemane to pray. Y'all remember that part of the story? And he says, pray that ye enter not into temptation. Why do you think he said that? He knew they were going to be tempted to not pray. He knew. And we've talked about this before. It's easy, in my opinion, to go through Bible reading, check off everything. And I've heard a lot of the younger girls talking recently about praying. How do you keep your mind focused on that? So some of them have been talking about they write it out. One of them was really cute. She was like, I close one eye and keep the other eye open and read them. I was like, that's the cutest thing I've ever heard. I love that they're talking about it, because if you talk about it, the younger you are, the better habits you establish for later in your life. If you don't get a grip on it till later in life, it is a continuous struggle. And so just like the disciples struggle with praying, I myself struggle with my mind going, dong, dong, dong. I'm like, oh, get back. What was I praying for? Who was I praying for? Oh, dong. It's like the guy that was like, squirrel, squirrel. Like, it's all over the place. And so you've got to find a way to keep your mind focused on all of that. The Lord knew that, and that's why he said that to them. He encourages them to watch and pray. And he says, the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. And that's where we struggle. My spirit all day long is like, yes, I want to do this. Yes, I want to do this. And then my flesh is like, oh, but no, we're so tired. I want to do this instead. We're constantly battling the flesh. And we have to get all of that out to be able to focus on spiritually what we need. He was calling them to be prepared and to be prayed up. He knew what was coming, and he's telling them, please pray. And so he's getting ready to be crucified. He knew what would be a trial after that. He's gone. He knows Jesus knows all of this is coming. And so it's just like us. The Lord knows what's coming in my life. I don't, but he does. And he's trying to teach me to be prepared ahead of time. But how many times do we get in the middle of the trial and we're not exactly like we need to be, and then we want to try to get it all fixed in the middle of it, and it's so overwhelming to try to get my spiritual life fixed while dealing with the trial, when if I would just be prepared and prayed up ahead of time, it would be so much better. So we're going to end there about being prepared. We're going to talk next week. We'll finish up that part about not being prepared like we're supposed to in our prayer, but then we're going to talk about how to be prepared for battle. I don't know about you, but this lesson was very encouraging to my heart and convicting in the same way of what I need to work on, but also the fact that the Lord is there for me and that he's praying for me. He's got my back when nobody else does. And I'm thankful for that. So I want to encourage you, finish reading through this lesson, dig in a little bit deeper, go read all those verses that are listed in there. And we will see you next week to finish up this lesson. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.